Chapter 10:14. Hundreds of thousands of miles later, Lu Ming appeared at the bottom of a small lake. He then entered the mountain-river diagram and sat cross-legged on a mountain peak. He began to refine the essence blood and concept runes that he had devoured previously. This time, Lu Ming had devoured hundreds of experts at the spirit embryo realm and above. Among them, there was no lack of people at the 8th or 9th level of the spirit embryo realm. There were even people at the perfected spirit embryo realm. Furthermore, many of them cultivated the concept of water. So many concept runes were continuously refined and merged into Lu Ming's own concept of water runes. His concept of water quickly rose. In just a few hours, Lu Ming's concept of water had broken through to the upper 3rd level and continued to rise. Early 3rd level, middle 3rd level, late 3rd level. When all the concept runes were refined, Lu Ming's concept of water rose to the late 3rd level. When Lu Ming's concept of water rose to the late 3rd level, the spirit embryo in Lu Ming's dantian finally exploded with a strong suction force. The energy that had been devoured seemed to have found an outlet and was crazily converted into vital essence, raising Lu Ming's cultivation. Lu Ming's cultivation, which had stagnated for more than half a year, also began to rise rapidly. Early 8th level of the spirit embryo realm, middle 8th level of the spirit embryo realm. When everyone's energy was completely refined, Lu Ming's cultivation rose to the peak of the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm. However, his bloodline did not rise. All the essence blood had been used to raise the 9 dragons bloodline. Clearly, it was still not enough. After refining all the energy, Lu Ming opened his eyes. At the same time, a lotus platform appeared in his hand. There were 81 petals on the lotus throne, and each petal was filled with dense water concept and water spirit chi. Lu Ming planned to use the purifying lotus platform to raise his concept of water. First, he plucked 3 petals and swallowed them. After refining the petals, they melted in his mouth. There was a cool feeling that flowed down his throat and turned into a cool energy that spread throughout Lu Ming's body. At this moment, Lu Ming seemed to be immersed in endless water vapor. He could clearly sense the concept of water. Lu Ming closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. When the energy of the 3 petals disappeared, Lu Ming continued to pluck 3 more petals and swallowed them. Lu Ming's concept of water started rising rapidly again. After refining the 27th petal, his water concept broke through to the perfection of the 3rd level in one go. It stood side by side with the wind, fire, and lightning concepts and was slightly higher than the earth concept. The concept of earth was only at the peak of level 3 greater mastery. He was still a step away from level 3 perfection. This was not the end. Lu Ming continued to refine the remaining petals. He was charging towards the 4th level of water concept. The pure water lotus throne was extremely useful for 3rd level concepts, as well as 3rd level concepts breaking into 4th level concepts. This wasn't just a saying. It truly had a miraculous effect. Moreover, how terrifying was Lu Ming's current comprehension ability. So when he refined all the petals, Lu Ming actually really broke through the bottleneck in one go and broke through to the 4th level of water concept. Water concept was the last concept that Lu Ming comprehended, yet he never imagined that he would be the first to break through to the 4th level. Lu Ming opened his eyes and revealed a delighted expression. Being able to break through to the 4th level had exceeded his expectations as well. He originally didn't have any hope of successfully breaking through. After all, the 4th level of concept was the last concept. It was extremely difficult to break through. Many figures of the older generation were stuck at this step and were unable to break through for their entire lifetimes. Lu Ming never imagined that he would break through in one go this time. Lu Ming reckoned that this was greatly related to the enormous karmic luck he possessed that allowed his comprehension ability to increase tenfold. Otherwise, it would absolutely be impossible for him to break through to the 4th level so easily, even if he possessed a treasure like the pure water lotus throne. Of course, the barrier of the spirit god realm wasn't as simple as concept. Some people couldn't break through to the spirit god realm even after breaking through to the 4th level of concept. Of course, Lu Ming was still a distance away from breaking through to the spirit god realm, so there was no need to consider it for the time being. 10 days have already passed. It's time to go out. Next, I'll travel and cultivate while heading to the ancient Saint dynasty. Lu Ming pondered in his heart. This was his current plan. His cultivation was still weak at the moment. Even if he arrived at the ancient Saint dynasty, he didn't have the strength to take Xianyinqing away. He planned to travel while risking his life to cultivate and raise his strength. After exiting the mountain river diagram, Lu Ming soared into the sky and headed towards the west. Lu Ming's speed wasn't very fast, but after a day, he still traversed a distance of several million miles. A large city appeared in front of him. On the city gate, there were 3 large words, Sunset Moon City. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. What a coincidence. Previously, Chu Kuang said that if Lu Ming ended his seclusion 10 days later, he could come to the Howling Moon Inn in Sunset Moon City to have a drink with him. Previously, Lu Ming didn't take it to heart. He didn't expect that he would still come to Sunset Moon City. Since I'm here, I'll go take a look at the Howling Moon Inn. Chu Kuang said that there's a grand event happening soon. I wonder what it is. Lu Ming smiled and walked into Sunset Moon City. Sunset Moon City was huge, twice the size of Lishui City. Howling Moon Inn was extremely famous in Sunset Moon City. That was because Howling Moon Inn was the largest inn in Sunset Moon City. After asking a random person, Lu Ming knew where Howling Moon Inn was. After turning a few streets, a 5-story inn appeared before his eyes. Sir, are you here for a drink? Even in the entire floating mountain range, the wines of our store are among the best. The moment Lu Ming entered the inn, a waiter came up to him. I'm here to look for someone. Lu Ming said, Oh, who are you looking for? I have some impression of anyone who enters our inn to drink. The waiter replied, Chu Kuang. Lu Ming said, So you're the guest that young Master Chu Kuang is waiting for. Young Master Chu Kuang is in a private room on the 5th floor and has already been drinking here for 3 days. He said that a friend will come to look for him in a few days. It must be you, young master. Please follow me. The waiter said. Lu Ming's heart moved. He didn't expect that Chu Kuang was really waiting for him here, and even waited for 3 days. People said that Chu Kuang liked to make friends. It seemed that it wasn't an exaggeration at all. Following the waiter, they arrived in front of a private room on the 5th floor. Before the waiter could announce, a loud laugh came from the private room. Ha ha ha, I sensed your aura the moment Brother Lu came. Creak. The door of the private room opened. Chu Kuang walked out with a smile on his face. The waiter also retreated. Brother Chu, were you waiting for me? Lu Ming asked. That's right. Since I said that I wanted to be friends with you, I naturally had to wait here for you. However, I originally planned to wait for a day at most. If you didn't come, I would have left. Fortunately, you came. It seems that Brother Lu still recognizes me, haha. Chu Kuang laughed heartily. Lu Ming secretly felt ashamed. He didn't plan to come, but he just happened to pass by Sunset Moon City, so he came to take a look. Brother Lu, please. The wine is ready. Chu Kuang waved his hand. Lu Ming and Chu Kuang walked into the private room, one after the other. In the corner of the private room, there were already several empty jars. It was obvious that Chu Kuang had drunk a lot of wine these days. Haha, Brother Lu, you must be joking. I'm a wine addict. I come here every once in a while to drink the wine of Howling Moon House. Chu Kuang laughed. Chapter 10:15. Lu Ming opened the lid of a jar of wine and took a big gulp. He could feel the fragrance lingering in his mouth and could not help praising good wine. Chu Kuang also picked up the jar and took a big gulp. Then he looked at Lu Ming and said, Brother Lu, you didn't use your full strength in the battle that day, right? Why do you think so? Lu Ming smiled and did not answer directly. It's just a feeling. Chu Kuang said, I have a feeling that if I continued to fight, I would definitely lose, and I would lose miserably. So I admitted defeat to avoid embarrassment. Haha. Lu Ming smiled faintly, declining to comment. Of course, he did not use his full strength at that time. Brother Lu, you're not from the central continent, are you? Chu Kuang suddenly asked. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. His eyes flashed and he said, Why do you think so? I'm just guessing. Every time there's a battle of Providence, all the heroes in the world will take part. They won't miss this opportunity. However, I've never seen someone as talented as Brother Lu in a battle of Providence. I'm just curious. So I'm guessing that Brother Lu might be a peerless genius from the eastern wilderness, northern plains, southern Ming, or other places. Chu Kuang laughed. Brother Chu, you think too much. I've been cultivating in the mountains before, so I missed the battle of fate. Lu Ming said, Haha, Brother Lu, you don't need to think too much. I was just casually asking. I like to make friends with all the heroes in the world, especially heroes like Brother Lu. No matter where Brother Lu is from, this Chu is determined to make friends with you. Please, Chu Kuang said as he lifted the jar of wine. Lu Ming also lifted the jar of wine and took a big gulp. Chu Kuang's words seemed to be true. He was just asking casually. That was indeed the case. The Battle of Providence had already ended, yet such a prodigy had suddenly appeared. Everyone would be curious. However, Lu Ming was not very worried. Because his second body was in the Liangyi mountain and would occasionally appear during this period. Martial Emperor Di would not suspect that Lu Ming would appear in the central continent. After all, the twin life forbidden technique was simply too unimaginable. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it either. Moreover, Lu Ming didn't show any of his iconic bloodlines in the middle continent, nor did he show any sign of the dragon bloodline eruption. No one would suspect that he was Lu Ming from the eastern wilderness. The two drank wine and chatted casually. Lu Ming also took the opportunity to ask Chu Kuang about the specific situation of the major forces in the central continent. There were a total of 18 overlords in the central continent. There were both humans and demons. They occupied the vast eastern wasteland. Every overlord force had a ruler overseeing it, and they were incomparably powerful. Beneath the 18 overlord forces, there were many other powerful forces. In fact, some of them were so powerful that they even had supreme beings holding down the fort. Lu Ming sighed inwardly. The central continent was indeed powerful, and the eastern wilderness could not be compared to it. He wondered how powerful the central continent ancient sage dynasty was when it was at its peak. Brother Lu, in my opinion, you have a great chance of becoming a second-class prodigy, Chu Kuang exclaimed. Second-class genius? Lu Ming was a little surprised. Oh, Brother Lu, you don't know about this division? In the central continent, the top prodigies are divided into 3 classes. For example, I'm a third-class prodigy. In the Floating Mountain sect, there are only 3 prodigies above the third class. The others like Yang Tsong and Hai Ziming, who you've met before, aren't even in the third class. Chu Kuang explained. Brother Chu, you're only a third-class genius? Lu Ming was secretly shocked. Chu Kuang's talent was definitely not inferior to Shuejiani and AO2's, but he was only a third-class genius. How terrifying would a second-class or even first-class genius be? That's right, I'm only a third-tier prodigy. As for the Hanging Mountain, only the number 1 prodigy of the younger generation can be considered a second-tier prodigy. However, there aren't many second-tier prodigies in the central continent. Chu Kuang said. Lu Ming was secretly shocked. If Chu Kuang was only a third-class genius, then second-class geniuses must be stronger and more talented. Lu Ming guessed that second-class geniuses were probably at the level of Emperor God. If they were really at the level of Emperor Gods, there were actually more than 20 of them. That was terrifying. Emperor God was said to be able to inherit the legacy of martial Emperor Di. He was a rare genius in the entire history of the Eastern continent. There were more than 20 such geniuses in the central continent? What about the first-class geniuses? As if he could read Lu Ming's mind, Chu Kuang continued, above the second-class prodigies are the first-class prodigies. However, there are fewer of them, only 5 of them. They are known as the 5 young giants. Each of them is a figure who suppressed an era. They are extremely terrifying, peerless, and extremely powerful. Chu Kuang's eyes were filled with awe and fear as he spoke. Obviously, the top 5 young geniuses were extremely important to him. The top 5 young geniuses? Lu Ming's eyes lit up and a strong battle intent flashed past. Although the geniuses at the level of Emperor God were also extremely powerful, and each of them had the potential to become an emperor in the future, they were all incredible existences. However, Lu Ming did not feel too pressured because he had fought with Emperor God before. Although Emperor God was extremely terrifying, Lu Ming was confident that he could suppress Emperor God again in the future. However, the geniuses at the level of Emperor God were terrifying. Lu Ming could not imagine how powerful they were. However, this made Lu Ming even more excited. Lu Ming was not afraid of having opponents. He was only afraid of having no opponents. Only when there were opponents would there be pressure and motivation. The Central Continent was indeed more brilliant than the Eastern Continent. The clash of geniuses was also more intense. The Battle of Providence in the Central Continent must be extremely intense. Unfortunately, I'm not in the Central Continent. Lu Ming felt that it was a pity. Brother Lu, do you remember when I said that there would be a grand event in the near future? 10 days later, 2 second-class geniuses will fight at Pillar of Heaven's Mountain. It will definitely attract a lot of attention. After the Battle of Providence, many geniuses who have been cultivating in seclusion may reappear. Chu Kuang said. There was a flash in Lu Ming's eyes. There was a look of anticipation. He speculated that the second-class geniuses were at the level of Emperor God. A battle between 2 such geniuses was indeed a grand event. It was absolutely rare, and Lu Ming did not want to miss it. It was a good opportunity to see how powerful the top geniuses in the Central Continent were. Why are 2 such geniuses fighting? Lu Ming asked curiously. One of them is Sanguinarum from Cold Blood Hall, and the other is Yin Bupo from Sky Eagle Fort. Both of them are the strongest in the younger generation of their respective forces. These 2 forces have a grudge against each other. Therefore, it's normal for them to be at odds with each other. The 2 of them exchanged thousands of blows in the Battle of Providence, but were unable to determine the winner. Therefore, they agreed to fight again in 10 days. Chu Kuang explained. Lu Ming nodded. I see. Brother Chu, when are we leaving? Lu Ming asked. We'll leave immediately. However, before going to Pillar of Heaven's Mountain, I need to return to Floating Mountain. Brother Lu, do you dare to come with me? Chu Kuang said. Why not? Chapter 10:16. The Floating Mountain sect was one of the overlords of the Central Continent. Naturally, it was extraordinary. However, Lu Ming was still stunned when he saw it. In front of them was a boundless body of water. Above the boundless body of water, there was an incomparably huge mountain floating in the air. This huge mountain was so huge that one couldn't see the end of it. It was like a mountain where the ancient gods lived. It was floating 1,000 meters in the air. The floating mountain was like its name. It was really a mountain that floated in the air. Looking from afar, the floating mountain was filled with clouds and water vapor. Under the sunlight, rainbows hung in the air. At a glance, there were countless rainbows. It was incomparably dazzling. It was like a paradise on earth. What a great floating mountain! Lu Ming couldn't help but exclaim. Haha, let's go. Chu Kuang laughed and flew towards the floating mountain with Lu Ming. With Chu Kuang leading the way, they naturally entered the floating mountain without any obstructions. Lu Shaoqing. At this moment, an incredulous voice sounded. Lu Ming turned his head and couldn't help but find it funny. Isn't that Ling Yunkong? Lu Shaoqing, you actually dare to come to the floating mountain? Ling Yunkong's eyes widened. After a while, he turned his gaze and saw Chu Kuang. His expression changed drastically. What? Brother Lu is my friend. Do you have a problem with him? I've heard some things about you from Brother Lu. Chu Kuang looked at Ling Yunkong and licked his lips. His eyes flashed fiercely. Ling Yunkong's expression changed again. His face turned pale. He hurriedly said, No, Lu Shaoqing is your friend. How would I dare to have a problem with him? No problem at all. When Ling Yunkong saw Chu Kuang, he was like a mouse that saw a cat. He was scared to death. You better not do evil in the name of the Floating Mountain sect in the future. Also, if you dare to touch Brother Lu's friend again, I'll cut you with my saber. Chu Kuang's eyes flashed fiercely as he looked at Ling Yunkong. I wouldn't dare. I definitely wouldn't dare. Ling Yunkong was covered in cold sweat. He nodded repeatedly. Scram! Chu Kuang coldly shouted. Ling Yunkong hurriedly ran away in fear. Ling Yunkong seems to be afraid of you, Lu Ming said. I've taught him a lesson a few times in the past. Also, there was another genius who was similar to Ling Yunkong. The 2 of them were always running amok. One of them was killed by me. He was afraid that I would kill him too. Chu Kuangyi laughed. Lu Ming nodded. This Ling Yunkong was scared to death of Chu Kuang. Chu Kuang's talent was far greater than Ling Yunkong's. Even if he killed Ling Yunkong, the upper echelons of the hanging mountain wouldn't stand up for him. The floating mountain was extremely large. The two of them flew for hundreds of thousands of miles before arriving at a cliff. There was a courtyard at the edge of the cliff. Wenjing, I'm here. Chu Kuang shouted as they arrived at the courtyard. Not long after, the door to the courtyard opened and a young woman walked out. The young woman had a graceful figure and snow-white skin. She wore a light yellow dress and was extremely beautiful. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. The number 3 genius of the floating sky mountain was called Zhang Wenjing. Could it be this girl? The floating mountain sect had 3 third-class geniuses and above, and Zhang Wenjing was one of them. Big Brother Chu, you're here. You're late by 2 days. The young woman said. Haha, Wenjing, don't blame me. I made a new friend and drank with him for 2 days, so I rushed over. Chu Kuang laughed and continued to introduce. Wenjing, this is Brother Lu Shaoqing. Brother Lu, this is my junior sister. Zhang Wenjing? Chu Kuang said. You're Lu Shaoqing? Before Lu Ming could speak, Zhang Wenjing spoke first. She looked curiously at Lu Ming. Miss Wenjing, have you heard of my name? Lu Ming asked. Of course I have. You suppressed Ling Yunkong and defeated Hai Ziming. The news has spread all over the floating sky mountain. How could I not know? Zhang Wenjing smiled faintly. Haha, I believe Brother Lu's name will spread all over the central continent soon. Chu Kuang laughed. Zhang Wenjing's eyes flickered, and she was slightly surprised. It seemed like Chu Kuang thought highly of Lu Shaoqing. Obviously, Zhang Wenjing hadn't heard of the purifying lotus platform battle. If she had, she wouldn't be so surprised. Wenjing, let's go to Pillar of Heaven's mountain, Chu Kuang said. This place was quite far from Heavenly Jewel Mountain. They had to set off as soon as possible. Zhang Wenjing nodded. Then, the 3 of them flew out of Floating Sky Mountain and headed northwest. Cold Blood Hall was an overlord force in the north of Floating Sky Mountain. It was also a neighbor of the Eastern Wilderness. Sky Eagle Castle was west of Cold Blood Hall. Pillar of Heaven's Mountain was located between Cold Blood Hall and Sky Eagle Castle, northwest of Floating Sky Mountain. It was extremely far away. It was at least 50 large domains in the Eastern Wilderness. It was obviously impossible to travel such a distance by flying. First, they took the teleportation formation to the area near Pillar of Heaven's Mountain. Then, they flew there. Pillar of Heaven's Mountain was a barren land surrounded by vast mountains. The 3 of them flew for several days and suddenly stopped in front of a forest. What a strong smell of blood! Zhang Wenjing's face changed slightly. Lu Ming's and Chu Kuang's faces sank. The 2 of them had also smelled the extremely strong smell of blood. The smell of blood came from the mountain on the right. Let's go and have a look. Chu Kuang took the lead and flew in that direction. Lu Ming and Zhang Wenjing followed. Soon, they found the source of the smell of blood. In the mountain, there was a castle made of stone. It was a small town where many people lived. But now, they were all dead. The town was littered with corpses. The 3 of them scanned the air and estimated that at least 100,000 people were dead. They were all dead. The smell of blood filled the air. No wonder the 3 of them could smell the blood from so far away. Who is it? Who killed so many people? Most of them were just ordinary people. Zhang Wenjing's face was pale. The smell of blood here is all converging in one direction, Lu Ming said. He observed carefully and found that the smell of blood in the air was all converging in one direction. Could it be someone from Cold Blood Hall? Chu Kuang's eyes flickered. Cold Blood Hall's cultivation was mostly related to blood. But because Cold Blood Hall's cultivation was too overbearing and terrifying, other forces were dissatisfied and put pressure on Cold Blood Hall. Cold Blood Hall also promised that they would not attack ordinary people. But now, most of the people who died here were ordinary people. The 3 of them looked at each other and slowly walked in the direction where the smell of blood was converging. There's someone there. Zhang Wenjing transmitted her voice to the other 2. In the center of the town, a middle-aged man in a blood-red robe was sitting cross-legged. The smell of blood filled the air. Endless smell of blood was converging toward him and entering his body. Bloodthirsty technique. It's an expert from Cold Blood Hall. Let's go. Chu Kuang whispered. His eyes showed a trace of seriousness, and he wanted to retreat. Chapter 1017. Three geniuses with exuberant vital blood have arrived. Haha, the heavens are really on my side. Die. The middle-aged man stretched out his palm and clenched it. In an instant, 5 blood-red ribbons effused out like 5 soft whips that swept towards the three of them. Bang, bang, bang. The three of them erupted at the same time. Chu Kuang slashed out with 2 icy cold rays of light that slashed towards 2 of the blood-red ribbons. Lu Ming executed the hell suppression scripture and slapped his palms down successively towards the 2 blood-red ribbons. On the other hand, Zhang Wenjing slashed out with a sky-blue strand of sword chi that collided with one of the blood-red ribbons. 5 successive rumbles resounded. Lu Ming's figure moved over 10 steps back successively, and Chu Kuang was in a similar state as well. On the other hand, Zhang Wenjing was in a slightly better state and only moved a few steps back. After all, she was only dealing with a single ribbon. A domain-enlightened spirit god. The three of them thought at the same time, and their expressions were extremely solemn. Since a casual attack was able to force the three of them back, it was absolutely a domain-enlightened spirit god. The middle-aged man was slightly surprised when he saw that he hadn't killed Lu Ming's group of 3 with a single attack, but he was soon overjoyed. Haha, the 3 of you can be considered to be third-rate geniuses. Your vital blood is dense. Kill. The middle-aged man roared with laughter as he waved his 10 fingers successively, causing 10 blood-red ribbons to coil around Lu Ming's group of 3. The ribbons seemed to be light, but they were terrifyingly formidable, and they whistled through the air as they tore through the air. Let's charge out of here. Chu Kuang roared loudly as a 7th-grade god-rank bloodline appeared above him, and he directly executed bloodline fusion. He didn't dare be careless in the slightest when facing a domain-enlightened spirit god because carelessness would lead to death. Zhang Wenjing executed bloodline fusion as well. Lu Ming didn't execute bloodline fusion, but he erupted with 3 strands of dragon energy, and every single one of his attacks was extremely terrifying. Bang, bang. The 3 of them joined forces and executed their strongest attacks. They instantly destroyed the 10 blood-red ribbons, and then they intended to fly towards the distance. Don't even think of leaving. Blood cage. The middle-aged man still didn't stand up, and he just sat there cross-legged while slapping his palms down. Suddenly, countless blood-red ribbons appeared in the sky, forming a cage made of blood-red ribbons, sealing the 3 of them inside. The 3 of them fought back, and the crimson cage kept shaking. However, they couldn't break it open for a while. Slash. The crimson-robed middle-aged man shouted coldly. With a flick of his finger, 3 terrifying crimson-colored saber lights slashed towards the 3 of them. Bang, bang, bang. The 3 of them tried their best to resist the blood-red saber light. However, in the end, Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing's bloodline trembled nonstop. They were almost blasted back into their human forms. Lu Ming also felt a burning pain all over his body. His blood and chi were in turmoil, and he almost vomited blood. Fortunately, Lu Ming's defense was terrifying, so he was able to successfully block it. Break. Lu Ming continued to increase the power of the suppressing hell heavenly art. After several punches, the blood cage finally collapsed. The 3 of them rushed out at top speed. You want to leave? No way. The crimson-robed middle-aged man stood up abruptly. Blood energy surged from his body, and he slashed out 3 consecutive saber lights that crossed 10,000 meters in an instant, slashing towards the 3 of them. The 3 saber lights were incomparably terrifying, as if they could split the 3 of them in half. Not good. Chu Kuang was shocked. He had a feeling that he would die under this saber light. Crash. At this time, Lu Ming's forehead lit up, and the mountain river diagram flew out. It circled the 3 of them, and then flew forward rapidly. Bang, bang, bang. The 3 saber lights slashed the mountain river diagram, but they didn't tear it apart. The mountain river diagram blocked a part of the force, but a part of the force still passed through the diagram and landed on Lu Ming, Chu Kuang, and Zhang Wenjing. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing immediately reverted to their human forms and vomited blood. Lu Ming's body also shook violently. His skin was cut open and blood flowed freely. Lu Ming endured the pain and flew forward with Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing. "Damn it!" The crimson-robed middle-aged man roared, but he didn't pursue them. His expression changed, and he continued to sit down cross-legged and absorb the blood energy in the surroundings. Lu Ming's group of 3 flew for over 100 kilometers before they descended into a gorge. After they descended, they sat down cross-legged and healed their injuries. In comparison, Lu Ming's injuries were not serious. The dragon scales under his skin had blocked most of the force. After 2 hours, Lu Ming was fully recovered, and the recuperation was completed. He glanced over and noticed that Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing were still healing. "There's still a huge gap between me and a domain enlightened spirit god." Lu Ming fell into deep thought. The gap between the spirit embryo realm and the domain enlightened spirit god realm was too huge. There was an enormous chasm between these two realms. Most importantly, the conditions to break through to the domain enlightened spirit god realm were too high. Ordinary cultivators or ordinary geniuses were utterly unable to break through to the domain enlightened spirit god realm. Those that were able to break through to the domain enlightened spirit god realm were geniuses amongst geniuses. This caused the gap between the two realms to be even greater. In fact, the further one cultivated, the greater the gap between the realms would be, and the more terrifying it would be. It would be difficult to surmount. Lu Ming was only at the peak of the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm now. It was too difficult and practically impossible for him to surmount such a huge gap and battle a domain enlightened spirit god realm expert. Perhaps it would be possible once he attained perfection in the spirit embryo realm. That crimson-robed middle-aged man is probably injured and is healing. Lu Ming thought to himself. If the crimson-robed middle-aged man wasn't injured, they might not have been able to charge out. After a few more hours, Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing finally opened their eyes, ending the healing process. "Thank you for your help this time, Brother Lu." Chu Kuang stood up and expressed his gratitude to Lu Ming. If it wasn't for Lu Ming, they probably wouldn't have been able to charge out. "You're welcome, Brother Chu." Lu Ming waved his hand. That expert from the Cold Blood Hall should be at the 1st level of the spirit god realm. I don't know why he was injured, so he massacred the entire town and used the blood of the entire town to heal himself. We just happened to encounter him. Chu Kuang analyzed. Lu Ming nodded. Chu Kuang's thoughts were similar to his. However, massacring an entire town of ordinary people to heal himself was too cruel. The 3 of them chatted for a while before they left and headed towards the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. The matter of a domain enlightened spirit god realm expert wasn't something they could meddle in, nor did they have the ability to do so. After flying for another 2 days, a towering mountain appeared in front of them. The Pillar of Heaven's mountain, as its name suggested, was like a pillar that was inserted into the ground and pierced through the clouds. It stood among the numerous peaks and could be seen at a glance. According to legend, the Pillar of Heaven's mountain was transformed from the weapon of a supreme expert in ancient times. At this moment, there were still 2 days before the battle between Sanguinarum and Inbupo. The 3 of them settled down in a small town nearby. The small town was bustling with people coming and going. After the Battle of Providence, this is the first battle between the second-class Sky Prides. It has attracted a lot of people. Chu Kuang looked around and sighed. The people walking on the streets in the small town were all experts. Any one of them was at least at the spirit embryo realm. There were men and women of all ages. Chapter 10:18. The 3 of them casually found an inn to stay in and waited for the arrival of the battle. Lu Ming made the best use of his time to comprehend the earth intent and temper his true origin energy and intent at the same time. 2 days passed in a flash. 2 days later, countless figures flew towards the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Lu Ming's group blended into the crowd and arrived near the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. When they arrived, they noticed that the area was already surrounded by people. At a glance, there were no less than 10,000 people. This showed the influence of second-grade prodigies in the central continent. The central continent was boundless, and it was 7 or 8 times larger than the eastern wilderness. It was full of outstanding people, geniuses, and experts. However, how many second-grade prodigies were there in such a vast land? Below the 5 young giants were second-grade prodigies. There were only a total of 20 or so second-grade prodigies, and they were rarely seen. In the Battle of Karmic Luck, most people didn't have the qualifications to watch the battle. That was why so many people were attracted this time. They all wanted to see exactly what cultivation realm the second-grade prodigies had attained and how terrifying their combat strength was. In the crowd, there were old people and some young people in their teens. These young men were the most excited. They were the younger generation and had missed the Battle of Karmic Luck. They wanted to see how powerful the prodigies who were half a generation older than them were to motivate themselves. So many experts. Chu Kuang's gaze swept across the crowd. He discovered many geniuses who were on par with him. They were third-class geniuses. There were also some who were not third-class geniuses but were not to be underestimated. For example, Hai Ziming, Wu Kong, and Ling Yunкong from the Floating Mountain were among the crowd. There were even a few old men who stood in the sky and emitted extremely shocking auras. They were clearly domain spirit gods. This battle had even drawn the attention of domain enlightened spirit gods. Suddenly, demonic chi surged into the sky as a black-robed young man walked through the air and attracted everyone's attention. Junyu! It's Junyu of the Devil Mountain! Someone exclaimed when they saw this young man. Junyu of the Devil Mountain is here too. Zhang Wenjing and Chu Kuang exclaimed as well. Lu Ming's heart jolted as well, and he couldn't help but size Junyu up carefully. During this period of time, Lu Ming had asked Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing about the central continent. Chu Kuang talked the most about the younger generation of prodigies. Lu Ming had some understanding of the prodigies of the central continent. Of course, it was mainly the 5 young giants and 20 second-grade prodigies, as well as the various overlord forces. The Demon Mountain was also one of the dominant forces in the central continent. Junyu was one of the more than 20 second-class prodigies. This person is indeed very strong. He gives off a very terrifying feeling. He's definitely a genius at the level of an emperor god. Junyu Yu of the heavens. Junyu Yus. Apparently, the battle between Yin Bupo and Shui Luozi had attracted the attention of other sky prides. Junyu stood silently in midair with his hands behind his back, and he looked straight ahead as if no one could draw his attention. He didn't even spare a glance at those domain enlightened spirit gods, and he seemed as if he didn't take them seriously at all. Indeed, with his natural talent, it was only a matter of time before he broke through to the spiritual god realm. In the future, he was almost certain to reach the exalted realm. His goal was to become an emperor, so how could he care about ordinary spiritual gods? The crowd continued to wait. Jing Kongling of the Floating Mountain. Suddenly, the crowd exclaimed again. Junior sister Kongling is here. Chu Kuang's eyes lit up as he looked at the sky. A young lady in a water-colored long veil was walking through the air. Her body was filled with water vapor. She looked to be in her 20s. She was extremely beautiful, and her graceful figure was faintly discernible in the water vapor. Her bare feet were like the most beautiful art piece in the world. Every step she took would cause a cloud to appear in the sky. She was walking on the cloud, step by step. The scene was silent, as if everyone was attracted by the lady. So she's Jing Kongling. She really is peerless. Lu Ming couldn't help but praise her in his heart. Chu Kuang was ranked second in the Floating Mountain, and the number 1 genius of the Floating Mountain was Jing Kongling. She was a lady with terrifying natural talent. At the same time, she was also a second-grade genius. She was equally famous as Junyu, Yin Bupo, and the others. Moreover, Jing Kongling was one of the 5 great peerless beauties of the central continent. Everyone in the central continent knew about her. In the past few days, Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing had mentioned her many times to Lu Ming. Lu Ming had been extremely curious about this peerless genius for a long time. Lu Ming couldn't help but compare all the women he met with Jing Kongling. He noticed that only Xian Yinqing could compare to Jing Kongling. The others like Mulin's and Autumn Moon were slightly inferior. Jing Kongling, I never expected that this battle would draw you here as well. Jun Yu's gaze finally moved. He looked at Jing Kongling, and a trace of a burning light flashed in the depths of his eyes. "Aren't you here as well?" Jing Kongling said faintly. Her voice was tranquil, and when it entered one's ears, it gave a very comfortable feeling. It was as if it could calm one's restless heart. Just like her name, she was like an ethereal fairy, untainted by even a speck of dust. "Brother Jun, Sister Kongling, you're early." A sweet and clear voice rang out. Not far away, another woman stepped through the air and arrived. This lady looked younger than Jing Kongling, but her appearance was not inferior to Jing Kongling's at all. Her small face was a little pale, but she had a sickly beauty that made people want to go up and protect her. Sandalwood Fairy from the Medicine King Valley. Many people widened their eyes. Another second-grade genius, and also one of the 5 great beauties of the central continent. Many people felt that they were going crazy. They felt that this trip was too worth it. This time, before the 2 main characters of the battle had arrived, there were already peerless geniuses coming one after another. Even 2 of the 5 great beauties of the central continent had come. It was worth it, too worth it. Many people had traveled hundreds of millions of miles just to see one of the 5 great beauties, but they could not. Today, they could see 2 of the 5 great beauties. What was not worth it? Sandalwood Fairy. Chu Kuang's eyes also lit up. He stared at Sandalwood Fairy with a lecherous look, which made Zhang Wenjing, who was beside him, unhappy. In fact, Zhang Wenjing was also a rare beauty, but compared to Jing Kongling and Sandalwood Fairy, she was far inferior. "Sister Sandalwood, why are you here too?" Jing Kongling stepped forward and came to Sandalwood Fairy's side. The 2 peerless beauties stood together. Almost everyone's eyes fell on the 2 women. Many people's eyes were burning with passion, but no one dared to flirt or even hit on them. Although the 2 women were peerless beauties, they were also famous geniuses. They were extremely terrifying. If anyone dared to flirt with them, it was guaranteed that they would die without knowing how. "Ha ha ha, I didn't expect both of you to come. I'm so honored." There was a loud laugh, and a bolt of lightning flashed in the distance. In the next moment, a young man in a purple feather robe appeared at the top of Sky Pillar Mountain. The young man had a cold gaze and a hooked nose. His eyes were extremely sharp, and there were traces of lightning flashing in them. "In Bupo." Someone spoke out that person's name. Chapter 10:19. Hee, in Bupo, why don't you take a look in the mirror? Are the 2 fairies here for you? A cold laugh was heard from another direction. A crimson light flashed and a young man in a crimson robe appeared on the other side of Pillar of Heaven's mountain. This young man's face was slightly pale. He was very handsome and gave off a feminine feeling. "Imph, Blood Luazi, you look like you're half dead. Are the 2 fairies here to see you?" In Bupo sneered. The 5 great beauties of the central continent. Not only were they beautiful, but they were also extremely talented. Naturally, they had countless suitors. Many second-grade geniuses were their suitors. There were even the 5 great young lords. There were rumors that In Bupo and Sanguinarum were both Sandalwood Fairy suitors. Now that the 2 supreme talents had arrived, the crowd finally shifted their attention from Jing Kongling and Sandalwood Fairy to In Bupo and Sanguinarum. Today, the 2 of them would have an earth-shattering battle. Lu Ming also looked at the 2 of them. Whether the second-class supreme talents of Middle Continent were at the same level as the Emperor Realm would be revealed soon. "Humph, In Bupo, you were lucky to escape from the previous Battle of Providence. Today, I'll kill you." Sanguinarum sneered. "Haha, you'll be the one to die today." In Bupo sneered. He let out a long cry and turned into a huge divine eagle. The divine eagle was surrounded by terrifying lightning energy. In Bupo wasn't a human, but a monster. Sky Eagle Castle was a monster force. Most of them were eagle-type monsters. Of course, there were also other flying monsters. However, the majority of them were eagle-type monsters. It was said that the castle master of Sky Eagle Castle was a powerful eagle emperor. In Bupo had the bloodline of a divine beast, Latian Sacred Eagle. The concentration of the bloodline was shocking. Boom. Sanguinarum said it casually, but he didn't dare to underestimate In Bupo. He unleashed his aura, and a crimson light shot up to the sky. Kill! Embark let out a long cry and flapped his wings. Terrifying lightning energy gathered and turned into lightning swords that slashed towards Sanguinarum. Crimson Divine Saber. Sanguinarum clenched his fist, and endless crimson light gathered to form a crimson saber. He shouted and slashed out. The crimson saber radiance swept across the space and clashed with the lightning swords. Boom, boom, boom. The sword chi and saber chi swept out in all directions. Many of the weaker cultivators were shocked and retreated. Liu, Chu Kuang, and Zhang Wenjing stood still as they watched on the ground. In the blink of an eye, Embark and Shueluozi had exchanged dozens of blows. Shueluozi, I haven't seen you for half a year. Embark's voice. More than enough to suppress you. Sanguinarum's, is that so? Embark sneered. He flapped his wings and let out a long cry. The blood in his body boiled, and the sky was filled with lightning. Swoosh! Embark's wings seemed to have turned into a blade of lightning, cutting through everything and slashing towards Shueluozi. Bloodthirsty realm. Shueluozi let out a long roar as his blood chi soared into the sky. A semicircular blood-red light shield spread out in all directions. A terrifying, devouring force spread out. Even though they were far away, many people felt their blood become restless, as if it was about to leave their bodies. Cold blood Hall's bloodthirsty skill, Chu Kuang said solemnly. Lu Ming's expression changed. He felt that the bloodthirsty skill was similar to the Nine Dragons' devouring power. However, the bloodthirsty skill only targeted blood and wasn't as overbearing as the Nine Dragons' devouring power. Boom! Embark's lightning blade slashed onto the crimson light shield, and a deafening roar was heard. However, he was also affected by the bloodthirsty skill. His blood was restless, and his combat strength was affected. He couldn't use his full strength. Squeak, squeak. At this moment, an ear-piercing sound was heard. A giant bat appeared above Sanguinarum's head. The bat's body was blood-red. Its eyes were extremely cold and filled with a bloodthirsty glow. Blood-winged heavenly bat was a terrifying divine beast. Obviously, Sanguinarum's bloodline was blood-winged heavenly bat. There were 8 dazzling chakras around the blood-winged heavenly bat. Level 8 divine class bloodline. Sanguinarum's bloodline rank was the same as an emperor god's. Sanguinarum used bloodline fusion and turned into a blood-winged heavenly bat to fight against Embark. Terrifying energy shot out, causing the space to tremble unceasingly, as if it would be torn apart at any moment. It was already completely distorted. The terrifying forces spread out for thousands of miles. Many mountains were swept by the forces and turned into dust in an instant. However, most of the forces landed on the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. However, the Pillar of Heaven's mountain seemed to be formed by an ancient strong practitioner's weapon. The terrifying forces didn't cause any damage to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. At most, they only left some marks on it. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged more than 100 moves, but the outcome was still undecided. God, so powerful, too powerful. Is this the combat strength of a second-grade prodigy? An elder with a perfect spirit embryo sucked in a cold breath and was extremely astonished. He had a feeling that with his perfected spirit embryo cultivation, he would be crushed into dust by the terrifying forces if he were to rush forward and get within 100 meters of the two of them. A perfected spirit embryo martial arts practitioner wouldn't be able to resist at all. Their cultivation should be at the peak of the 9th level of the spirit embryo realm. However, their combat strength is too terrifying. I'm afraid they are close to the spirit god realm. Even if they can't fight with the spirit god, they wouldn't be too far off. If they break through to the perfected spirit embryo realm, they might be able to fight with a spirit god realm practitioner. Terrifying. A spirit embryo can fight with a spirit god. This is too terrifying. The onlookers discussed as they watched. They were all shocked. Even the domain enlightened spirit gods had extremely solemn expressions on their faces. They are indeed powerful. They are definitely prodigies on the same level as the emperor god. Lu Ming thought to himself. His gaze was solemn. Now, he was sure that the second-grade prodigies of the central continent were definitely prodigies on the same level as the Emperor God. The fact that there were more than 20 such prodigies in the central continent was truly astonishing. I wonder what realm the Emperor God has reached? Lu Ming thought to himself. Half a year ago, the Emperor God's cultivation was at the peak of the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm. Now that more than half a year had passed, it was normal for the Emperor God to reach the peak of the 9th level of the spirit embryo realm. It was even possible for him to step into the perfected spirit embryo realm. If they met, he would still be Lu Ming's greatest enemy. Am I their match with my current combat strength? Lu Ming secretly measured his own combat strength. During the Battle of Providence, Lu Ming relied on the combination of the path of inscription and martial arts to suppress the Emperor God. However, the Emperor God wasn't completely defeated. Now, Lu Ming's path of inscription and martial arts were separated, so his combat strength was slightly weaker. However, compared to the Battle of Providence, Lu Ming also cultivated the concept of water. With the combination of 5 concepts, the power was extremely shocking. It was much stronger than 4 concepts. Even without the path of inscription, Lu Ming's combat strength was still strong. He was confident that he could suppress the Emperor God in a battle of the same level. However, he was in the central continent now. To prevent his identity from being exposed, Lu Ming couldn't use some of his techniques. He couldn't use all of his dragon power, so his combat strength was greatly reduced. In addition, Lu Ming's cultivation was only at the peak of the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm. If he encountered either the Sanguinarum or Inbupo, Lu Ming wouldn't be a match for them. My cultivation must increase as soon as possible. If I reach the 9th level of the spirit embryo realm, I won't be afraid of them even if I can't fuse my bloodline in a real battle. Chapter 10:20. The heavens and earth shook continuously. Half of the sky was filled with lightning, and the other half was filled with blood chi. Lightning and blood chi collided continuously. The crowd could not see Inbupo and Sanguinarum's figures at all. They could only see the light and shadows intertwining. The battle lasted for 2 hours. The lightning and blood chi in the sky dissipated at the same time. The 2 figures stood on one side of the sky, panting heavily. Their eyes were sharp and solemn as they stared at each other. It was a draw. It was said that during the Battle of Luck, the 2 of them had fought for 1,000 blows, but it was still a draw. It was the same today. Sanguinarum, I didn't expect you to be so capable. You're lucky today. Inbupo said coldly. I should be the one saying that. I'll spare your life today. Sanguinarum sneered. The 2 of them did not continue to fight. They had used up a lot of their energy after the fight. Moreover, there were many experts around. They had to save some energy in case someone attacked them secretly. Looks like they won't fight again this time. It's a draw again. Sanguinarum and Inbupo are really strong opponents. That's true. Sky Eagle Fort and Cold Blood Hall are close to each other, and the 2 forces are constantly fighting. Inbupo and Sanguinarum have been fighting since they were young. They have never won. However, it's a good thing that they have a lifelong opponent. Both of them have improved tremendously. It's a good thing to have an opponent. This is a golden era. There are so many geniuses. In the past, geniuses like Inbupo and Sanguinarum would be invincible. However, there are more than 20 of them now. There are even the top 5 young geniuses. Around them, many people could not help but sigh. There were too many geniuses in this generation. Second-class geniuses like Inbupo and Sanguinarum had the chance to break through to martial royal realm. In the past, it was considered good if there were 2 or 3 of them in each generation. But in this generation, there were more than 20 of them, and there were even more powerful 5 giants. Even in the Eastern Barren Territory, Southern Underworld, Northern Plains, and Western Desert, there were many geniuses. Geniuses were as common as clouds, competing with each other. This was a glorious era. Everyone knew that the battle was over. Some people were preparing to leave. Everyone, Sandalwood is preparing to host a Pill King banquet 7 days later at the Pill King courtyard. I'm inviting all the geniuses here to drink and discuss the Tao. Is everyone willing to give this little girl some face? At this moment, a crisp and pleasant voice sounded. It was Sandalwood Fairy. Everyone's eyes lit up. Haha, Sandalwood Fairy is personally hosting the Pill King banquet. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How can I not go? Demonic Mountain Junyu was the first to speak as his eyes flickered. Thank you, Brother June. Sandalwood Fairy bowed slightly. It's our honor to be able to participate in Fairy Sandalwood's Pill King banquet. As long as you don't mind, I will definitely pay you a visit when the time comes. The others scrambled to open their mouths, hoping to attract Sandalwood Fairy's attention. Then this little sister thanks everyone. This little sister will take her leave first. Everyone can stay in Dan City for the time being. 7 days later, you can head to Dan King Hall. After saying that, Sandalwood Fairy bowed slightly, then stepped into the air and left. Then, Jing Kongling also turned around and left, like a fairy in the clouds. In Bupo, let's fight another day, Sanguinarum said, then turned into a ray of bloodlight and left the place. In Bupo sneered and also left. Then, the others also left. Brother Chu, what is the Pill King banquet? Lu Ming asked Chu Kuang. The people of Medicine King Valley are all inscriptionists. Their main focus is alchemy. Medicine King Valley's elixirs are famous in the world. Some of the outstanding talents in Medicine King Valley will melt their best elixirs into wine every once in a while and invite all the talents to taste it. At the same time, they will befriend all the talents in the world. Therefore, although Medicine King Valley is not an overlord force, its influence is still terrifying. Chu Kuang explained. Lu Ming nodded his head. This tradition was unique. Let's go to Dan City first. Dan King Hall is in Dan City, Chu Kuang said. Then, the three of them flew towards Dan City. On the way, Lu Ming learned more about Medicine King Valley. Medicine King Valley used to be an overlord force a long time ago. But now, because there were no sovereigns, they had stepped down from their position as the overlord force. However, their strength was still terrifying and could not be underestimated. In Medicine King Valley, there was more than one supreme martial artist. They were good at alchemy and had good relations with all the major forces. Dan City was built as a subsidiary of Medicine King Valley. There was a sea of people, and it was very lively. Medicine King Valley sold all kinds of elixirs from Dan City. They also bought all kinds of spiritual herbs and spiritual flowers. Therefore, it attracted a large number of merchants to buy and sell elixirs. Dan City was not far from Tianju Mountain. In just half a day, the three of them arrived at Dan City. So many spiritual herbs, so many spiritual herbs. Unknowingly, Dandan appeared on Lu Ming's shoulder again, looking around furtively. On both sides of the streets of Dan City, there were almost all spiritual herb shops and pill shops. The rich medicinal fragrance came from all directions, lifting one's spirit. No wonder Dandan was looking around. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing glanced at Dandan and felt that this little turtle was quite interesting. Brother Chu, Miss Wenjing, how about we find a place to stay? Lu Ming said. Lu Ming wanted to find a place to go into seclusion. Okay. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing nodded, and the three of them found an inn to stay. In the room of the inn, Lu Ming's heart stirred and his figure disappeared. In the room, only the mountain river diagram was left floating. In the mountain river diagram, Lu Ming sat cross-legged on a mountain peak. With a wave of his hand, a large pile of origin stones appeared around him. Let's use the origin stones to break through to the 9th level of Spirit Embryo Realm. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. Previously, when he met the spiritual god from Cold Blood Hall, Lu Ming knew that there was a huge gap between him and a spiritual god. This time, when he saw the battle between Sanguinarum and Inbupo, Lu Ming felt a lot of pressure. Now that he had many restrictions and his cultivation was not high enough, he would most likely not be a match for geniuses like Sanguinarum and Inbupo. Therefore, he urgently needed to increase his strength. Originally, he did not plan to use the origin stones to increase his cultivation because it would definitely consume a lot of origin stones. Now that he did not have many origin stones left, he wanted to keep some as backup. However, he did not care so much now as it was more important to increase his strength. Roar! The 9-dragon bloodline appeared and opened its mouth to swallow. A terrifying devouring power erupted and tens of thousands of origin stones exploded. The 9-dragon bloodline devoured the majestic origin chi and started to refine it rapidly. Circulating the true battle dragon skill, the origin chi was refined continuously and turned into true origin chi. The true origin chi gathered in the spirit embryo and condensed continuously. The spirit embryo became stronger and smaller in size. After tens of thousands of origin stones were refined, another tens of thousands of origin stones were refined. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. In 3 days, Lu Ming had refined more than 300,000 pieces of primordial stones. Soon, his eyes flashed, and he continued to refine. Another day passed, and he had refined almost 100,000 origin stones. Boom! As if something was broken, Lu Ming's aura surged, and the true origin chi in his body roared. It was many times stronger than before. Chapter 10:21. Whoosh! At this moment, Lu Ming opened his eyes and revealed a satisfied look. However, the consumption of the ores made his heart ache. He had refined 400,000 ores. This was too shocking. However, after breaking through to the 9th level of Spirit Embryo Realm, Lu Ming's battle power had increased by a large margin. His vital essence was boundless, and he could unleash the power of the suppressing Hell Heaven skill. I wonder if I can fight against Enbupo and Sanguinarum with my current battle power? Lu Ming's heart stirred. Sanguinarum and Enbupo were both at the peak of the 9th level of Spirit Embryo Realm. Lu Ming was at the early stage of the 9th level of Spirit Embryo Realm. This was similar to when he fought against the Emperor God in the Battle of Fate. However, Lu Ming had to use all his methods and formations to suppress the Emperor God. Now, Lu Ming didn't have the path of inscription but had merged the concept of water. If Lu Ming could use all his methods and execute bloodline fusion, Lu Ming was confident that he could suppress Sanguinarum and Enbupo. However, if he couldn't execute bloodline fusion, Lu Ming wasn't confident. However, at least, Lu Ming was confident that he wouldn't lose. There are still 3 days before the Elixir King banquet. Let's take a walk around Elixir City. Lu Ming stood up and walked out of his room. He sensed that Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing's rooms were empty. They should have gone out for a walk. Elixir City was like a huge commercial city. There were shops everywhere and countless types of spirit herbs and elixirs. This was an eye-opener for Lu Ming. In some shops, one could even buy level 8 elixirs. However, the price was terrifying. Some places were filled with stalls. The stall owners would sell weird things. Some could be rare treasures while some could be trash. This place was called the Treasure District. It mainly tested one's luck. If one was lucky, they could buy something of high value. Of course, one also needed to have good eyesight. This place attracted many people. There were many people on the streets. Lu Ming strolled among the crowd, looking left and right. On his shoulder, Dandan was also looking around. After arriving here, Dandan became spirited and declared that no treasure would be able to escape its eyes with its eyesight. Unfortunately, he didn't find anything after walking around. The things here were strange. Some of the so-called spiritual grasses were actually weeds from the roadside. They were used to fool people. There were also some broken spiritual weapons that were used to pretend to be weapons left behind from ancient times. There were even some people who casually took a few stones and said that there were diluted treasures in the stones. Furthermore, they were sold for a very high price. Once it was sold, it would be a huge profit. That's Lu Ming, the purple jade in front. Yes, the purple jade that chick is buying. Buy it, it's of great use. Lu Ming was looking around when Dandan's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Dandan looked very excited. Lu Ming's spirit jolted as he looked forward. In front of a stall, 2 young women were standing in front of it. One of the young women was receiving a piece of purple jade from the stall owner. The purple jade that Dandan mentioned was this one. That purple jade is very ordinary. Is it a treasure? Lu Ming was surprised. How can you compare with my eyesight? Lu Ming, buy it, and you'll make a fortune. Dandan shouted. Lu Ming didn't hesitate and strode forward to the stall. He pretended to casually glance at the purple jade in the woman's hand and said casually, This purple jade is of good quality. It's just right to buy it and make a jade pendant for my sister. Brother, how much is this purple jade? The stall owner was a middle-aged man. At this time, he smiled innocently and said, Young master, you're late. This purple jade has just been bought by this young lady. She bought it? Lu Ming felt that it was a pity. He then sized up the young lady. The young woman was very beautiful. She was in her 20s and could be considered a rare beauty. Behind her, there was another woman. Judging from her appearance, she should be a maid. Miss, can you give this purple jade to me? Lu Ming cupped his fists and said, Hey, this purple jade was bought by my young lady first. Why should she give it to you? The maid behind the woman was the first to shout, It's nothing. I just saw that this purple jade was of good quality and wanted to buy it and make a jade pendant for my sister. Since this young lady bought it first, then I won't take it from you. Lu Ming smiled, cupped his fists, and was about to leave. Although it was a pity to miss it, since it had been bought, Lu Ming wouldn't take it by force. Young master, please wait a moment. At this time, the young woman called out and Lu Ming stopped. Actually, I only bought this purple jade because I thought it looked good. It's not of much use. Since you value it, I'll give it to you. The young woman stepped forward and handed the purple jade to Lu Ming. Lu Ming was quite surprised and didn't take it for a while. Kid, take it quickly. You'll regret it if you don't. Dandan kept transmitting her voice to Lu Ming. Lu Ming pondered for a moment and reached out to take the purple jade, saying, I'm Lu Shaoqing. Thank you for giving me this jade. May I know your name? If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely repay this kindness. I'm Zhou Xian. Young Master Lu is too polite. The young woman smiled slightly. So it's Miss Zhou. Is Miss Zhou also here to participate in the Pilking banquet? Lu Ming asked. Yes, it seems like young Master Lu is here for the same purpose as me. Zhou Xian smiled faintly as she looked around. The two chatted for a while before Lu Ming left. Dandan urged Lu Ming to go back and ask Lu Ming to cut the purple jade. There would be a surprise. Miss, why did you give that purple jade to that kid? After Lu Ming left, the maid said unhappily, Silly girl, where's this place? In Dan City, there are many outstanding young men participating in Mu Tanxiang's Alchemy King banquet. This person looks extraordinary. Maybe he's a genius. Using a useless piece of purple jade to make friends with a genius. Why not? Zhou Xian smiled faintly. Mrs. Wise. The maid flattered. Soon, Lu Ming returned to the inn. After entering his room, he directly entered the mountain river diagram. His palm glowed, and the purple jade appeared in his hand. This purple jade looked very ordinary. Could it be that there was really a rare treasure in it? Lu Ming, cut this purple jade. Be careful. Dandan instructed. Lu Ming stretched out his finger. True yuan spread out and condensed into a sharp sword, slowly cutting towards the purple jade. The purple jade was about the size of 2 fists. Lu Ming carefully cut it. When he was about to cut it halfway, a faint milky white halo spread out. There was really something in the purple jade. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He slowly cut the purple jade around him. Finally, a milky white jade the size of a longan appeared in Lu Ming's hand. What kind of jade is this? Lu Ming was a little curious. This was because this piece of jade looked ordinary. It did not look like a rare treasure at all. Kid, is this vitality stone considered a rare treasure? Dandan grinned. What? This is a vitality stone? Chapter 1022. It was actually a primordial stone. Lu Ming was ecstatic. A primordial stone was a very magical treasure because it could store a martial artist's true essence. A martial artist only needed to transfer their true essence into the primordial stone and store it in advance. When they needed it, they could directly absorb the true essence from the primordial stone. Because it was originally a martial artist's own true essence, there was no need to convert it, and it could be used directly. In this way, there was no need to worry about true essence drying up. A primordial stone was definitely a rare treasure for a martial artist. Sometimes, it was a treasure that could save one's life. Moreover, it could be used for a long time. It rarely appeared in the market, and once it appeared, the price would be terrifyingly high. Lu Ming never thought that there would be a primordial stone in this purple jade. I don't know if this primordial stone can withstand my true essence, Lu Ming thought. Different primordial stones could store a limited amount of primordial qi. An ordinary primordial stone could not store a sovereign's true essence. If a sovereign's true essence were to enter, the primordial stone would probably explode. Different primordial stones could store different amounts of primordial qi. Let's give it a try. Holding the primordial stone in his hand, Lu Ming continuously transferred his true essence into the primordial stone. Sure enough, once the true essence entered the primordial stone, it was stored in the primordial stone. After a while, Lu Ming's true essence almost all went into the primordial stone. It can withstand it. That's great. Lu Ming was ecstatic. In this way, Lu Ming could use true essence greatly increased. The hell-suppressing heaven skill's current power was equivalent to a mid-level low-grade divine martial skill. The consumption of true essence was too terrifying. Lu Ming had not dared to use his full power before, otherwise, the true essence in his body would be drained in an instant. But now, Lu Ming was not afraid. Even if it was drained in an instant, with the primordial stone, he could instantly replenish his true essence. In this way, Lu Ming really had another trump card. Now that he was using the hell-suppressing heaven skill, although he could not fully display the power of the hell-suppressing heaven skill, the power was much stronger than he could only use a few levels of power. Next, Lu Ming took out the origin stone and began to recover his true essence. After his true essence was completely restored, Lu Ming continued to input his true essence into the receiving essence stone. He predicted that this origin receiving stone should be able to withstand his true essence at the first level of the spirit god realm. In other words, before Lu Ming broke through to the second level of the spirit god realm, this origin receiving stone would be Lu Ming's trump card. When Lu Ming continuously poured in his true essence 5 times, Lu Ming stopped. Quintuple Zhen Yuan was equivalent to 5 times his Zhen Yuan, which was enough for the time being. After recovering his true essence, Lu Ming walked out of the inn. There was only a day left before the Pill King banquet would begin. More and more people gathered in Pill City. Other than those who had watched the battle between Yin Bupo and Sanguinarum, there were others who had rushed over after hearing the news. Of course, most of them were from the younger generation. Because the one who organized the Pill King banquet was Fairy Sandalwood, the people who gathered were naturally young people. It was not good for the older generation to mingle with these young people. Lu Ming brought Dandan and strolled around, hoping to gain something. Unfortunately, after walking around in a big circle, there was nothing. Lu Ming laughed at himself. He knew that he was too greedy. It was really lucky that he was able to get the origin receiving stone last time. He could not help but feel apologetic towards Zhou Xian. Originally, Zhou Xian had bought it first, and then gave it to Lu Ming. Gradually, Lu Ming strolled to the north side of Pill City. There were fewer buildings here, and instead, there were many hills. I smell a fragrance. What a strong medicinal fragrance. There are spirit herbs. Dandan's nose suddenly twitched. Then, it rushed off Lu Ming's shoulder and ran forward at an extremely fast speed. This guy. Lu Ming was speechless and chased after it. After crossing a hill, they arrived in front of a valley. Dandan slowed down a little and rushed left and right into the valley. Lu Ming's brows furrowed. This valley was filled with inscription formations. Now that Lu Ming did not have the spirit fire, he could not break the formation. However, even if he could not break the formation, he might not be able to stop Lu Ming. Although Lu Ming did not have the spirit fire, his understanding of the path of inscription was still there. Moreover, as his second body comprehended the path of inscription, he could also feel it. During this period of time, his second body had been cultivating wholeheartedly in Yinyang Mountain. The speed of his improvement was astonishing. His second body did not have any distracting thoughts. Coupled with the providence, his comprehension had increased tenfold. When he cultivated wholeheartedly, his progress was much faster than Lu Ming's main body. His understanding of the path of inscription was improving every day. Therefore, although Lu Ming did not have the spirit fire, he still had the ability to see. Although the formation of this valley was brilliant, Lu Ming could still see the flaws with a single glance. After pondering for a while, Lu Ming stepped out. He moved forward and backward, left and right, heading into the valley. Soon, he arrived at the depths of the valley. In the depths of the valley, Lu Ming saw a herb field. There were many types of spirit herbs planted in the herb field. The medicinal fragrance was incomparably rich and floated in the valley. These spirit herbs are all level 7. Lu Ming was shocked. Lu Ming discovered that almost all the spirit herbs in the herb field were level 7, and there were no less than 1,000 of them. At this moment, Dandan was rolling around in the herb field. Its eyes were shining with excitement as its claws constantly grabbed the spirit herbs in the herb field and stuffed them into its mouth. Dandan, hurry up, Lu Ming urged. It was impossible for this large herb field to be ownerless in Pill City. It must have been planted by the experts of the Medicine King Valley. Stealing other people's spirit herbs in other people's territory, even Lu Ming was a little apprehensive. Like a whirlwind, Dandan quickly stuffed over 100 spirit herbs into its mouth. They were all level 7 upper grade. This guy's eyes were sharp, and he picked the best ones. Where did this thief come from? How dare you steal from here? Suddenly, a delicate voice rang out and a beautiful figure rushed out from the valley. In the air, inscriptions filled the air and the formation shone. Rays of light wrapped around Dandan. Not good. Dandan was shocked and ran wildly. Its 4 limbs retracted into its turtle shell. The turtle shell danced in the air and dodged the formations one by one. It flew toward Lu Ming. Moose Sandalwood. Seeing the beautiful figure, Lu Ming was shocked. The beautiful figure in the valley was actually Sandalwood Fairy, Moose Sandalwood. Lu Ming's body glowed, and his physical body rapidly changed into another appearance. He grabbed Dandan and quickly retreated. Stay here. Sandalwood Fairy's jade-like hands danced, and the spiritual fire between her eyebrows glowed. On the ground around Lu Ming, formations constantly appeared. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. He glanced around and took a few steps. Every step was very mysterious. He stepped on the weak points of the formation and retreated quickly. In a few breaths, Lu Ming retreated 1,000 meters. Sandalwood Fairy exclaimed softly and stopped. Her beautiful eyes revealed a very strange look, and she did not continue to attack or pursue. Seizing this opportunity, Lu Ming flashed rapidly. Very soon, he left the canyon and disappeared. Strange, it's really strange. There's clearly no spiritual fire, but he can see the weakness of the formation at a glance and avoid the attack of the formation. It's really strange. This is the first time I've encountered such a thing. Sandalwood Fairy whispered with curiosity in her eyes. Chapter 10:23. She could clearly sense that Lu Ming did not have the slightest bit of spiritual fire. This was very rare. Ordinary martial artists would cultivate spiritual fire as an auxiliary martial art. However, she could not sense any spiritual fire on Lu Ming. Yet, Lu Ming's eyesight was extremely terrifying. He could see through the weakness of the formation immediately. Even she could not do better than him. That was why she was even more curious. You immediately hid your appearance and changed your appearance to hide from me. Unfortunately, it's not that easy to hide from me. Sandalwood Fairy pursed her lips and smiled charmingly. Lu Ming rushed out of the canyon and let out a long breath. With his current combat strength, he was not afraid of Sandalwood Fairy. However, he was in the wrong. Moreover, this was Pill City, the territory of Medicine King Valley. If he was discovered by the Medicine King Valley's level 8 inscriptionists, he would be in deep trouble. You bastard, I won't care about you anymore. Lu Ming glanced at Dandan. Kid, what did you say? Why didn't you say that when I found a treasure like the Nayuan pill for you? Dandan glared at Lu Ming and bared his teeth. Lu Ming was silent and speechless. Indeed, Dandan had helped Lu Ming a lot at times. However, he was also the one who caused trouble. Kid, now that I've obtained the spiritual medicine, I'll be able to recover faster. Once I'm fully recovered, I'll be able to dominate the world. At that time, not to mention martial emperors, I'll be able to kill even stronger opponents with a single slap. When that time comes, there will be countless people who want to curry favor with me. You won't have a chance. Dandan said proudly. Oh, how long will it take for you to fully recover? What level of spiritual medicine do you need? Lu Ming asked. I don't know. As for spiritual medicine, if you want me to fully recover, mere spiritual medicine is useless. I need stronger treasures, such as sacred medicine. Dandan muttered. Die. Lu Ming immediately despised him. What was the use of saying so much? Holy medicine? What was a panacea? That was a legendary supreme treasure, an unparalleled treasure. Even if a ruler saw it, he would go crazy over it. In terms of level, it was something that completely surpassed a ruler. Above level 9 spirit medicine was the saint medicine. The man and the tortoise bickered as they returned to the inn. Then, Lu Ming threw Dandan into the mountain and river diagram, and Lu Ming continued to cultivate. Early the next morning, Lu Ming, Chu Kuang, and Zhang Wenjing headed towards the Pill King Courtyard. The Pill King Courtyard was located in the west of Pill City. It was very famous, and everyone in Pill City knew about it. There were people from the Medicine King Valley guarding the entrance of the Elixir King Courtyard. However, after Chu Kuang revealed his identity, they naturally did not stop him, and the three of them entered the Elixir King Courtyard. Inside the Pill King Courtyard, the fragrance of herbs assailed the nostrils. Every blade of grass, every tree, and every flower were spirit herbs. Many of the buildings were built like pill furnaces. Their shapes were simple and unadorned, and they were filled with the aura of time. There were colorful butterflies and bees fluttering in the flowers, gathering pollen for the spirit flowers. These colorful butterflies and bees were not ordinary insects. They were all exotic species. For example, every single one of those bees was a level 5 demon beast, equivalent to a king realm cultivator. The honey they brewed in the future was a type of treasure medicine that was priceless. Entering the Elixir King Courtyard and smelling the fragrance of herbs made one feel refreshed and their breathing smooth. If an ordinary person entered here and stayed in this environment for a few days, it was guaranteed that they would not be plagued by illness and would live a long life. Lu Ming clicked his tongue in wonder. This Medicine King Valley was the same as the Talisman Puppet Sect. They were both great sects of the Tao of Inscription. However, the Talisman Puppet Sect was more inclined towards talismans and puppets, while the Medicine King Valley was more inclined towards alchemy. Moreover, their fates were very similar to the Talisman Puppet Sect. There was once a ruler overseeing both of them, but now the ruler had passed away. In fact, the Talisman Puppet Sect could no longer be considered an overlord force because there was no ruler overseeing it. Lu Ming looked around carefully and walked a few rounds in the courtyard. When they arrived at a courtyard, it was already filled with people. They were all young people, and he didn't see any older generation figures. There were around 10 tables with around 80 to 90 people. At the side, there were disciples of the Medicine King Valley walking around and serving jugs of fine wine. Someone was already impatiently pouring out the fine wine. Instantly, the fragrance of the wine assailed the nose and drifted in all directions. Good wine, it's really good wine. Chu Kuang's nose twitched as his eyes lit up. It's indeed good wine, Lu Ming praised. Before drinking it, Lu Ming could feel that it was absolutely good wine. Moreover, there were many types of spirit herbs in the wine. It was absolutely not ordinary wine. Brother Lu, this is the outer courtyard. Third-grade prodigies and above should be in the inner courtyard. Chu Kuang transmitted his voice to Lu Ming. So that's how it is? Lu Ming suddenly understood. No wonder he didn't see any famous prodigies here, let alone second-grade prodigies like Fairy Sandalwood, Jing Kongling, and Junyu. It turned out that there was an inner courtyard and an outer courtyard. Obviously, only third-grade prodigies and above could enter the inner courtyard. Chu Kuang, Zhang Wenjing, and Lu Ming walked towards the front door, attracting many people's attention. That's Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing. I'm so envious. Third-grade prodigies and above can enter the inner courtyard and drink with peerless beauties like Fairy Sandalwood and Jing Kongling. I heard the inner courtyard's fine wine is even more precious. Who's that kid? How come I've never seen him before? He dares to enter the inner courtyard. Be careful not to be kicked out. In the end, many people looked at Lu Ming with some surprise, because they felt that Lu Ming was a stranger, as if they had never seen him before. Only Hai Ziming, Ling Yunkong, and the other floating sky mountains prodigies remained calm. They were clear that Lu Ming was definitely a third-grade prodigy. Of course, Lu Ming heard these words as well. He ignored them and walked through the main door into the inner courtyard. There was a small lake in the inner courtyard, and the environment was more elegant and unique. There was a pavilion beside the small lake, and in the pavilion, there was a table. There were only 6 people sitting around the table. Fairy Sandalwood, Jing Kongling, Junyu, In Bupo, and Sanguinarum. In addition, there was a young man in white who Lu Ming had never seen before, but needless to say, he was also a second-grade prodigy. Otherwise, he wouldn't be qualified to sit at that table. Below the pavilion, there were 2 tables with more than a dozen young people sitting at them. These people were obviously third-grade prodigies. So it's Brother Chu and Miss Zhang. Please come in. Fairy Sandalwood waved her hand slightly and smiled. When her gaze turned to Lu Ming, a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes, and then the corners of her mouth curved into a smile. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly restrained his aura, not looking at Fairy Sandalwood. "Ha, Chu Kuang, long time no see. I wonder if your strength has improved recently." At this time, an arrogant voice sounded. Lu Ming looked in the direction of the voice and saw that it was a young man in a blood-red robe. He had a burly figure and an arrogant expression, sitting between the 2 tables below. "Huang Kuei, you were just lucky to win the Battle of Providence. Don't talk about it every day." Chu Kuang said coldly with an ugly expression. "Lucky? Hee, you really know how to flatter yourself." Chapter 10:24. Huang Kuei sneered at Lu Ming with a look of disdain. Lu Ming frowned slightly. He didn't say a word when he came in, but Huang Kuei took the initiative to talk to him. "Huang Kuei, Brother Lu is qualified to enter this place," Chu Kuang said with a sullen face. "Haha, qualified? Do you think you're qualified? If that's the case, anyone can bring someone in. Are there any rules?" Huang Kuei sneered, then looked at Sandalwood Fairy and said, "Fairy, I suggest we drive this person out." However, before Huang Kuei could finish, Sandalwood Fairy raised her hand slightly and interrupted Huang Kuei. "Brother Huang, you don't have to say anything more. I know Brother Lu. He's qualified to enter this place." The crisp voice spread throughout the entire area, causing many people's eyes to move. They were somewhat surprised. Sandalwood Fairy actually knew this young man with the surname Lu? Where did he come from? Was he also a third-class Sky Pride? Why hadn't they seen him in the Battle of Providence? Many questions arose in everyone's mind. Huang Kuei's face stiffened, then turned red. He was so embarrassed that he wanted to die. Previously, he was scolding Lu Ming loudly, saying that Lu Ming was a good-for-nothing who was not qualified. However, in the next moment, Sandalwood Fairy directly said that she knew Lu Ming and that Lu Ming was qualified. This was equivalent to slapping him in the face in public. He was burning with anger and was very dissatisfied with Sandalwood Fairy, but he didn't dare to show it. "It's all because of Chu Kuang and this kid who embarrassed me." Huang Kuei didn't dare to be dissatisfied with Sandalwood Fairy, so he could only transfer his anger to Lu Ming and Chu Kuang. He picked up the wine glass and took a sip, his eyes cold. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing were also a little stunned. Sandalwood Fairy actually knew Lu Ming? Could it be that Lu Ming and Sandalwood Fairy were old acquaintances? Everyone had different thoughts. Even Lu Ming's expression changed slightly. Could it be that I've been recognized? Lu Ming couldn't help but think, "Brother Lu, please take a seat." Sandalwood Fairy waved her hand and smiled sweetly, pointing at their table. This time, the scene exploded and everyone's expression changed. "What?" Sandalwood Fairy asked this Lu guy to sit at the top table. "That table is reserved for second-tier prodigies. Does this Lu guy have the right to sit there? How is that possible? How many second-class prodigies were there? I didn't even see him in the Battle of Providence. How can he be a second-tier genius? Then why did Sandalwood Fairy call him to the seat of honor?" Many third-class prodigies were discussing in low voices. However, everyone had a doubtful look on their faces. Even Jing Kongling, In Bupo, Junyu, and the others were startled as they looked at Lu Ming curiously. On the other hand, Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing's expressions were even more interesting. Lu Ming himself was also a little stunned. "Brother Lu, please." Sandalwood Fairy extended another invitation. "All right, Lu Shaoqing, thanks, Fairy." Lu Ming clasped hands and stepped forward, not bothering to be courteous. This brat really went up. He really dares to go up? Does he really think that he can stand shoulder to shoulder with a second-class prodigy? Lu Ming's action caused another round of discussion in low voices. This brat. Huang Kuei's face turned even uglier. Lu Ming didn't care about the gazes around him as he stepped forward. He was now certain that Sandalwood Fairy had recognized him. Since she had recognized him, he could only face it. At worst, he would just have to compensate Sandalwood Fairy with those spiritual herbs. Brat, get lost. This is not a place for you to come up. Just as Lu Ming stepped onto the pavilion, a cold voice rang in Lu Ming's ears. It was a voice transmission, so no one else could hear it. Lu Ming raised his eyebrows and looked at someone. Sanguinarum. It was Sanguinarum who had spoken just now. At this moment, Sanguinarum stared at Lu Ming in an unfriendly manner. Lu Ming sneered. Then, he ignored Sanguinarum and continued to step forward. He came to the table in the pavilion and sat down on an empty chair. He completely ignored Sanguinarum. This made Sanguinarum's face turn ugly. A trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. Jing Kongling, Junyu, and the others also looked at Lu Ming curiously. It's about time. Let's not wait any longer. Serve the wine now. Sandalwood Fairy's voice rang out. Then, she clapped her hands gently. A few young women brought pots of wine. A small pot of wine was placed in front of each of them. The first wine is called Heart-Burning Flame. Everyone, please try it. Sandalwood Fairy said coquettishly. As soon as Sandalwood Fairy finished speaking, someone couldn't wait to pour the wine and drink it in one gulp. Lu Ming also poured a cup for himself. When the wine was poured into the cup, a layer of flame seemed to appear on the surface of the wine, dancing in the cup. What a wonderful wine! Lu Ming praised in his heart. Then, he picked up the cup and drank it in one gulp. The wine was mellow and sweet, but when it slid down his throat and into his stomach, it was like a flame that burned fiercely. In particular, there was a heat that flowed into his heart. Lu Ming felt that his heart was burning, but he didn't feel the slightest pain. Instead, he felt warm and comfortable all over his body. This wine can also burn and condense one's true yuan. Lu Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. He found that his true yuan was slightly more condensed. Good wine. Lu Ming couldn't help but pour another cup and drink it again. Then, Lu Ming poured a few more cups. Soon, the pot of wine was finished. Lu Ming licked his lips, looking like he hadn't had enough. The others were similar. Even some of the women, who usually didn't drink much, drank it all. Good wine, Heart-Burning Flame. It really lives up to its name. Next to Lu Ming, a young man in white side. This person was a peerless genius of the World Academy, Kong Xin. It really is good wine. Junyu also praised. His body faintly flashed with a demonic light, his aura threatening. It's good that everyone likes it. My sister's efforts were not in vain. Next, I invite everyone to taste the second wine. Sandalwood Fairy chuckled. Then, she clapped her hands. Another young woman brought up the wine, and everyone still had a pot. This wine is called Clear Spirit Dew. Sandalwood Fairy introduced. With the previous Heart-Burning Flame wine, many people couldn't wait and began to drink. Lu Ming poured a cup and drank it in one gulp. This wine gave off a completely different feeling from the previous Heart-Burning Flame wine. When this wine entered the stomach, a cold feeling spread throughout the body and finally gathered in the mind. Suddenly, Lu Ming felt his mind become incomparably clear. His thoughts were active, several times stronger than usual. Lu Ming's heart stirred. He carefully sensed the concept of Earth. He discovered that his comprehension of the concept was several times faster. This wine could actually increase a martial artist's comprehension ability. Of course, this was temporary. The wine was fused with spirit pills. Once the medicinal efficacy wore off, the effects would naturally disappear. But it was still amazing enough. If consumed for a long time, one's cultivation speed would definitely be greatly enhanced. One cup after another, the entire pot of wine was quickly emptied. Chapter 1025. The wine brewed by Sandalwood Fairy is really rare. I'm so lucky today. Haha, yes. If others knew about this, they would be so envious. The youths began to flatter Sandalwood Fairy, hoping to get her attention. Since everyone is in such high spirits, why don't we have a duel to liven things up? Huang Kui raised his cup and strode out, his voice echoing throughout the area. Everyone was excited. The show was about to begin. Drinking wine was only one aspect of the gathering, but sparring was inevitable. Huang Kui was the first to suggest it. Using martial arts to liven things up, of course. Sandalwood Fairy waved her hands, and inscriptions shone on the ground. A fighting ring appeared in an open space not far away. This fighting ring was originally refined by our seniors for sparring. It's sturdy and indestructible. You can use it to your heart's content. Sandalwood Fairy introduced. Thank you, Sandalwood Fairy. Huang Kui smiled and stepped onto the battle stage. He glanced around and his gaze landed on Chu Kuang. Chu Kuang, you lost to me in the Battle of Luck. Half a year has passed. I wonder how much progress you've made. Do you dare to fight me? Why wouldn't I? Chu Kuang downed a cup of wine in one gulp and landed on the battle stage in a flash. Miss Zhang, what are Brother Chu's chances of winning? Lu Ming transmitted his voice to Zhang Wenjing. Zhang Wenjing's expression was grave. She transmitted her voice to Lu Ming. It's hard to say. Huang Kui is the second genius of Cold Blood Hall. He is very powerful. Back then, Brother Chu was defeated by Huang Kui in the Battle of Providence. Although Brother Chu has improved over the past 6 months, Huang Kui will not remain stagnant. So Huang Kui is also from Cold Blood Hall. Lu Ming's heart jumped. No wonder Sanguinarum had shouted at him to get out. Boom. At this moment, the two of them had already started fighting. The two powerful auras collided with each other, resulting in a violent explosion. Chu Kuang and Huang Kui were both at the early stage of the 9th level of Spirit Embryo Realm. Apparently, they had just broken through. 10,000 miles of ice. Chu Kuang slashed out rays of saber light. The terrifying cold chi seemed to be able to freeze the entire Alchemy Academy. Humph, it's this move again, Blood Flame Claw. Huang Kui's blood and chi boiled as he clawed out numerous claw lights. These claw lights reeked of blood, and a blazing heat burst forth from them. The blood-red flames and the ice continued to clash against each other. Sizzling sounds could be heard from the battle stage. The ice was melted by the flames, and mist filled the entire area. In Bupo waved his hand, and the cold wind blew away the mist. Meanwhile, the geniuses of the outer domain had also heard the commotion. They all rose into the air and looked over. Chu Kuang is fighting with someone. His opponent is Huang Kui. Hai Ziming said. Chu Kuang lost to senior brother Huang Kui in the Battle of Providence. This time, Chu Kuang will definitely lose. A genius from Cold Blood Hall sneered. That was then and this is now. I don't think so. Hai Ziming replied coldly. Really? Just watch. The Cold Blood Hall disciple sneered. Cold Blood Hall and Floating Mountain bordered each other, and their relationship was not good. In the central continent, the emperors stood side by side, and the various overlords fought for supremacy. They were not harmonious and had conflicts with each other. For example, Sky Eagle Fort and Cold Blood Hall were mortal enemies. At the same time, the relationship between Cold Blood Hall and Floating Mountain was not good. As the crowd discussed, the battle in the battle stage became more intense. The two had already exchanged more than 100 blows. Bloodthirsty Realm. Huang Kui displayed a terrifying unique skill of Cold Blood Hall, and a blood-red light screen exploded in all directions. Chu Kuang's expression changed drastically, and he quickly retreated. He seemed to be very afraid. Even though he retreated, he was still affected. The blood in his body boiled, as if it was about to leave his body. Blood Flame Emperor's Hand. Huang Kui changed his move again, and his attacks became more violent. Chu Kuang had no choice but to use Bloodline Fusion. But then, Huang Kui also used Bloodline Fusion. It turned out to be a blood-red claw, like the claw of some kind of creature. It was very powerful. The two bloodlines collided in the air, and soon dozens of blows were exchanged. But it was obvious that Huang Kui was stronger and gradually gained the upper hand. In the end, Chu Kuang's bloodline was torn by the blood claw, and he reverted to his human form. He spat out blood and looked very pale. Huang Kui also reverted to his human form and laughed. Chu Kuang, I think you're getting more and more useless. You lost faster than last time. You'll never be a match for me, haha. Huang Kuei laughed arrogantly, full of contempt. Chu Kuang's face was gloomy, and he did not say anything. Since he had lost, it was useless to say anything. It would only be more embarrassing. Haha, I told you that Chu Kuang would lose. You floating mountain has no one else to show except Jing Kongling. In the sky of the outer yard, the sky prides of Cold Blood Hall sneered. Hai Ziming and the others looked a little pale. But the sky prides of Cold Blood Hall were right. Floating Mountain was indeed slightly weaker than Cold Blood Hall. Even among the overlords, there were strong and weak forces. Floating Mountain was considered weak among the overlords, while Cold Blood Hall was obviously stronger. Chu Kuang walked down the battle stage with an ugly face. He came to Zhang Wenjing side and side. Being defeated by Huang Kuei for the second time was a big blow to Chu Kuang. Brother Chu, it's normal to win and lose. Winning once doesn't mean you'll always win. I believe that you'll be able to defeat Huang Kuei in the future. Zhang Wenjing comforted him. Wenjing, I'm fine. Chu Kuang smiled and quickly adjusted his state of mind. Huang Kuei was still standing in the battle stage, looking proud and invincible. Finally, his eyes fell on Lu Ming, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Lu Shaoqing, do you dare to come up and fight? Huang Kuei shouted. He had his eyes on Lu Ming. Lu Ming was actually invited by Fairy Sandalwood to sit together with Sandalwood and the rest. This made him extremely jealous. Who was Lu Ming? How could he sit with Sandalwood Fairy and the others? How strong could a person who didn't even participate in the Battle of Luck be? Huang Kuei was sure that Lu Ming was not strong. Perhaps he was just lucky to know Sandalwood Fairy. Moreover, Lu Ming came with Chu Kuang. He wanted to defeat Lu Ming in public and humiliate him to prove that he was stronger than Lu Ming. In this way, he could also indirectly attack Chu Kuang. You want to challenge me? Lu Ming squinted at Huang Kuei and said indifferently, That's right. Do you dare to fight? If not, quickly admit defeat and get out of here. Huang Kuei smiled contemptuously. Hee, okay, I agree, but I won't take advantage of you. You've more or less exhausted in the battle just now. Let's fight again after you recover. Lu Ming said. No need. It's just dealing with Chu Kuang. It won't cost me much. And even if I'm exhausted, I'm confident that I can deal with you. Huang Kuei said confidently. Is that so? Up to you. Lu Ming got up, stepped out, and appeared in the battle stage. Everyone's eyes fell on Lu Ming. Chapter 1026. Even Junyu, Jing Kongling, and Kong Xian were looking forward to it. Even Sandalwood Fairy was looking forward to it. She invited Lu Ming to take a seat because she recognized that Lu Ming was the one who stole the medicine. She was curious about how he could move freely in the formation without any spirit fire, so she invited Lu Ming to take a seat. She also wanted to see how powerful Lu Ming's real abilities were. That's Lu Shaoqing? In the air above the outer court, Hai Ziming, Ling Yunkong, and the rest were shocked to recognize Lu Ming. It's that brat, the one who went in with Chu Kuang. Haha, an unknown brat dares to fight with senior brother Huang. I bet that he'll be completely destroyed by senior brother Huang within 10 moves. 10 moves? I don't think he'll even take 5 moves. Several talents from Cold Blood Hall sneered. Don't be so full of yourself. Hai Ziming replied coldly. He had fought with Lu Ming before, and felt that Lu Ming did not use his full strength. Maybe he could fight with Huang Kuei. I'm not being full of myself, but there's no doubt about it. The talents from Cold Blood Hall looked confident. In the fighting ring, Lu Ming and Huang Kuei stood opposite each other. Come on, Lu Ming said lightly, looking as if he was as calm as the clouds and wind. Humph, stop pretending. I'll make you show your true form soon. Huang Kuei sneered. His figure flashed, and a blood-red claw light shot toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming did not even look at it, and struck out with his palm. A 5-colored light flashed on his palm. Bang! The palm and the blood-red claw collided, producing a cracking sound and a muffled groan. Huang Kuei quickly retreated to the other side of the fighting ring, his face extremely ugly. One of his palms was trembling slightly, and one of his fingers was deformed. The whole place suddenly fell silent. Lu Ming actually forced Huang Kuei back with one palm and even broke one of his fingers. How could his battle strength be so terrifying? So you do have some skills. I was just careless just now. Next, I'll suppress you. Huang Kuei's voice rang out. His deformed fingers began to twist and recover. Whoosh, whoosh. His figure flashed repeatedly, pouncing towards Lu Ming. Blood Flame Emperor's Claw. Huang Kuei continuously clawed out hundreds of times. Endless blood-colored claw lights flooded towards Lu Ming. Every claw radiance was terrifyingly sharp. It was suffused with a blazing aura and possessed the terrifying power of burning and corroding. Bloodthirsty Realm. At the same time, Huang Kuei unleashed the Bloodthirsty Realm. He executed many of his ultimate skills at the same time. Huang Kuei wanted to use this move to defeat Lu Ming in one fell swoop. He wanted to ruthlessly humiliate Lu Ming and avenge his broken finger. Is this the bloodlust technique of Cold Blood Hall? Compared to the devouring power of the 9 dragons, it's far inferior. Lu Ming thought to himself as he felt the blood in his body trembling slightly. The Bloodthirst Grand Art could indeed affect the blood of others and weaken their battle prowess. However, it had no effect on Lu Ming. The devouring power circulated, and the blood flow stabilized. Bam! Lu Ming took a step forward and chopped down with his palm again. This time, the power of his palm was more than 10 times stronger than the previous one. The space distorted and exploded. The bloodthirsty realm collapsed like tofu. The claw radiance that filled the sky disappeared without a trace under Lu Ming's palm. Crack! Accompanied by the sound of bones breaking and a shrill scream, a figure retreated rapidly. Huang Kuei. It was Huang Kuei again. At this time, one of his palms was completely deformed. The bones in his fingers and palm were all broken and shattered into hundreds of pieces by the terrifying power. Hiss! Gasps could be heard from all around. Everyone looked at Lu Ming in shock. Lu Ming had beaten Huang Kuei to such a state with ease. He had completely crushed Huang Kuei in a crushing manner. Lu Ming actually had such battle prowess? This was too terrifying. Brother Lu's cultivation has broken through, Chu Kuang muttered. He felt that Lu Ming's cultivation had broken through. Previously, he was at the 8th level of Spirit Embryo Realm. Now, he was at the 9th level. When Lu Ming was still at the 8th level of Spirit Embryo Realm, he could already faintly suppress him. Now that his cultivation had broken through, he was indeed even stronger. Huang Kuei himself was also in disbelief. Lu Ming's strength was far beyond his imagination. Lu Shaoqing, let's call off this battle. You have the upper hand. However, I am indeed exhausted from the battle with Chu Kuang just now. Let's fight another day. Huang Kuei shouted. He was obviously afraid. You want to fight and you don't? Have you asked for my permission? Lu Ming sneered. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Huang Kuei in an instant. This Huang Kuei was really laughable. Before the battle, he said that he wasn't exhausted and that it was more than enough to deal with Lu Ming. Now that he saw that the situation wasn't right, he wanted to call off the battle. He even used the battle with Chu Kuang as an excuse. Lu Ming was too lazy to talk nonsense with him and directly chopped with his palm. You! Huang Kuei was alarmed and used all his strength to block. However, he was sent flying the next moment. The bones of the other hand claw were also broken. The next moment, his bloodline burst forth, and he transformed into a blood-colored claw. However, Lu Ming took a step forward and appeared in front of the blood-colored claw, chopping down with his palm. The palm suppressed everything and collided with the blood-colored claw, giving off a violent boom. The blood-colored claw then collapsed and transformed back into Huang Kuei's figure. Bam! Bam! Lu Ming executed 9 Dragon's Heaven trampling steps and stepped down towards Huang Kuei. Stop! In the pavilion, Sanguinarum stood up and shouted. His blood chi soared into the sky. However, Lu Ming only glanced at him casually and ignored him. He continued to step on Huang Kuei's body. Huang Kuei screamed miserably and fell heavily on the stage. The stage rumbled and Huang Kuei's bones cracked. He then laid on the stage like a dead fish, spitting out large mouthfuls of blood and twitching all over. Crushing. A complete crushing. The surroundings were completely silent, Not a single sound could be heard. In the sky above the outer yard, the geniuses who saw this scene were all dumbfounded. Huang Kuei, a third-class genius, was stronger than Chu Kuang, but he was like a piece of trash in front of Lu Ming. He was easily crushed and beaten into a dead dog. What kind of combat strength was this? Was Lu Ming a second-class genius? Hai Ziming, Ling Yunkong, and the others gasped in fear. They finally realized that Lu Ming did not use his true strength when he fought with them. Otherwise, they would have been in deep trouble. The geniuses of Cold Blood Hall were tongue-tied and could not say a word. They had previously said that Huang Kuei could crush Lu Ming in 10 or even 5 moves. However, the truth was completely opposite. Lu Ming had beaten Huang Kuei into a dead dog in less than 5 moves. Senior brother Huang Kuei might have exhausted himself in the battle with Chu Kuang. After a long while, a genius from Cold Blood Hall spoke. However, his words were met with a collective disdain. The battle between Lu Ming and Huang Kuei was not as simple as genuine essence consumption. It was a complete suppression of combat strength. Even if Huang Kuei was at his peak, the result would be the same. Even a blind man could see that. Not only them, but the geniuses of the inner yard were also stunned. Chapter 10:27. As for Jing Kongling, Junyu, Kong Xian, In Bupo, and the others, their expressions were solemn. Lu Ming's battle prowess was close to their level. Amazing! Sandalwood Fairy's eyes shone with excitement. Brat, I told you to stop. Didn't you hear me? Sanguinarum's face was gloomy as he glared at Lu Ming. Lu Ming glanced at Sanguinarum indifferently and said, "This is my battle with Huang Kuei. You told me to stop? Who do you think you are?" When Lu Ming's voice was heard, the entire place suddenly fell silent. Not only the inner courtyard, but the outer courtyard as well. Many people widened their eyes in shock. Who do you think you are? Lu Ming actually dared to talk to Sanguinarum like that. Does he want to die? Chu Kuang, Zhang Wenjing, and Hai Ziming sucked in a breath of cold air. Not good. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing's faces changed, revealing a worried expression. Although Lu Ming was strong, he shouldn't be Sanguinarum's opponent. After all, Sanguinarum was a second-grade prodigy. The difference between a third-grade prodigy and a second-grade prodigy was huge. Just like the Emperor God, if he used his full strength, he could kill Bloodsword 1 in a few moves. Sure enough, cold killing intent burst out from Sanguinarum's body as he stared coldly at Lu Ming. Laughing in anger, "Haha, brat, you actually dare to talk to me like that. Do you really think you're invincible just because you have some battle prowess? I'll let you know who I am right now. Who do you think you are? You'll pay a heavy price for what you said." With that said, Sanguinarum's figure flickered and appeared on the stage. Terrifying killing intent filled the air, causing many people to shudder. Everyone was shocked. Sanguinarum was going to attack Lu Ming. He wanted to kill Lu Ming. In the pavilion, Jing Kongling frowned and said, "Sanguinarum, you've gone too far. If you want to fight, I'll accompany you." After all, Lu Ming had come with Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing. As the #1 sky pride of the floating mountain sect, Jing Kongling naturally couldn't watch as Sanguinarum killed Lu Ming. "Jing Kongling, are you going to meddle in other people's business?" Sanguinarum said coldly. "So what?" Jing Kongling stood up. His body was surrounded by mist, making him look even more ethereal. "Miss Jing, there's no need for you to do anything. I alone am enough to deal with a bloodbath." Lu Ming's voice rang out again, leaving the others speechless. Lu Ming said that he was going to deal with Sanguinarum alone, and he even had a confident expression on his face. Where did his confidence come from? "Hee, Sister Kongling, I think there's no need for you to interfere. Maybe there'll be a surprise?" Sandalwood Fairy smiled. She was even more curious about Lu Ming now. Jing Kongling's gaze shifted, and then he sat down without saying anything else. "Lu Shaoqing, right? It's good to be confident, but you'll soon find that your confidence can be very stupid sometimes." Seeing Jing Kongling sit down, Sanguinarum's killing intent became even colder. "Is that so?" Lu Ming smiled faintly and kicked Huang Kuei, who was still twitching, off the fighting ring. This action made Sanguinarum's face darken again. How dare he do this in front of him? This was a slap to his face. Boom. A powerful aura burst out from Sanguinarum's body, and a layer of blood-red flames danced wildly. This blood-red flame was extremely terrifying. It was even more shocking and strange than the Wang family's pure purple heavenly fire. Lu Ming's face darkened slightly, and his genuine vitality ran wildly in his body. He dared not be careless in front of Sanguinarum. After all, he was a genius at the same level as an emperor god. Blood-gathering heavenly saber. Endless blood-red flames condensed into a saber. Sanguinarum held the saber with both hands, and his body rushed madly toward Lu Ming. He chopped down with the saber. A terrifying force pressed down on Lu Ming. The power of this saber alone had surpassed Huang Kuei's. The five-colored essence covered his body, and Lu Ming operated the hell-suppressing skill. He strode forward and struck out with his palm. Boom! The saber radiance and the palm collided with each other, creating a terrifying boom. Lu Ming's body swayed, and he retreated several steps. Lu Shaoqing retreated. He's no match for him. I knew it. He's no match for first senior brother. As soon as Lu Ming retreated, the geniuses of Cold Blood Hall began to ridicule him. It's just the beginning. What's the hurry? Hai Ziming responded coldly. Whoosh! At this moment, Sanguinarum chopped at Lu Ming again. His battle strength is indeed strong. Then I'll increase the power of the hell-suppressing skill. With a thought, Lu Ming struck out his palm again. This time, Lu Ming did not retreat. He held his ground. Blood-gathering heavenly saber. 9 slashes of heavenly saber. Sanguinarum roared, and his blood-red heavenly saber moved unhindered. Each strike was stronger than the last, and each strike seemed to be able to destroy everything. With a dragon roar, Lu Ming broke out 2 streams of dragon force. His strength increased greatly, and his palms continued to strike out. Boom, boom, boom. The fighting ring kept shaking, and a terrifying force shot out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, dozens of strikes had passed. The scene was silent. Everyone stared at the 2 men in the fighting ring with their eyes wide open. How can he be so strong? The disciples of Cold Blood Hall were shocked. They had thought that Sanguinarum could easily suppress Lu Ming, but now they realized that they were wrong. Lu Ming could actually fight Sanguinarum to this extent. Jing Kongling, Junyu, and the other second-class geniuses looked grave. Lu Ming could fight Sanguinarum to this extent, which meant that he was qualified to join the ranks of the second-class geniuses. Moreover, they could see that Lu Ming's cultivation was at the early stage of the spirit embryo realm, while Sanguinarum's cultivation was at the peak of the spirit embryo realm. The fact that Shui Luozi was unable to gain the upper hand despite having a higher cultivation base was shocking. Sanguinarum became more and more surprised. Lu Ming's battle strength was beyond his expectations. Bloodthirsty realm. Sanguinarum used the bloodthirsty technique. A light curtain spread out and enveloped Lu Ming. Lu Ming's blood was boiling. Sanguinarum used the same move, but it was much more powerful than Huang Kuei's. You're showing off in front of an expert when it comes to devouring power. Devour. Lu Ming's left palm exploded with a terrifying devouring power that enveloped Sanguinarum's entire body. At this moment, Shui Luozi's eyes widened in disbelief. Bloodthirsty intent. No, this power is 10 times more terrifying than bloodthirsty intent. My essence, blood, vital essence, and even my artistic conception are all vibrating. What kind of power is this? What kind of secret skill is this? Sanguinarum's mind raced. Sanguinarum was stunned. Lu Ming would not let go of this opportunity. He instantly attacked Sanguinarum with his palm like a heavenly knife. Not good. Sanguinarum hastily slashed out with his knife and clashed with Lu Ming's. The knife light was shattered by Lu Ming's palm, and the terrifying power landed on Sanguinarum's body. Sanguinarum spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated quickly. Bloodline fusion. Sanguinarum used bloodline fusion as he retreated, exploding with his strongest battle strength. 4 strands of dragon energy. Lu Ming also exploded with 4 strands of dragon energy. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.